Ambassador, you grew up in Montana, and if you don't mind, please let me share a quick personal note here. I remember around 15 years ago when I was working in Alberta, Canada, I recall many pleasant road trips down south to Great Falls, Bozeman, and all the way to Yellowstone, and driving past sweeping grasslands and mountain passes in Montana, a side of America far removed from the skyscraper and Hollywood image many Chinese often associated with the US. So I'm very curious, how has growing up in that beautiful nature environment shaped the way you think about China? And do Americans in the heartland see China differently from those in DC?
That's a very interesting question. I think Montana, growing up in Montana, did have a very important effect on me and how I regard China. First of all, you mentioned the beauty of the state of Montana, the mountains, the blue sky, the rivers, and so forth. But there's something even more important, I think. In Montana, because there's so few people, we tend to all know each other. And in addition, in Montana, no one puts on any airs. Nobody dares be condescending toward anybody else, or he or she be taken down. You cannot be a condescending person in Montana. It just doesn't work. And frankly, when I was traveling back and forth between Washington, D.C. and Montana, many plane tours back and forth, I'd see a Montanan on the plane, and he'd say, "Oh, hi, Max. How you doing? Are you straightening them out back there in D.C.?" He did not say, uh, Senator, how are you, Senator? It was Max. And that's very basic to Montana. We all know each other. We tend to know each other, and we there's no airs. Montana is an egalitarian state. It's very much an egalitarian state, different from Washington D.C., different from Silicon Valley, different from New York City or Hollywood. We're an egalitarian state, and that makes people here in Montana want to work with each other and not put on airs, not be condescending, not be obsequious, but just work with people. I think that's a very, very strong impression.
I think that makes recent developments especially interesting. Just days ago, another Montana voice, Senator Steve Dennis, led a bipartisan delegation to China at this very particular moment, right ahead of President Trump's expected visit. Why Montana? What's it about Montana's political culture or its economic structure that make it such an important bridge in China-U.S. relations?
Well, Montana's closer to China than is Washington, D.C. We in Montana tend to look a little bit um, across the Pacific to China, much more than do people in the eastern states. We're more Western or we're more Western oriented. By Western, I mean looking west across the Pacific Ocean. Easterners tend to be more Atlanticists. They look eastward across the Atlantic Ocean. They look at NATO. They look at the Mideast and so forth. So when you're growing up in the West, you have a little bit different perspective, and I think that's the main reason. Senator Steve Daines has been very interested in Montana, also because a very important person in my uh, political life is also somebody he looks up to, and that's former Senator Mike Mansfield. Mike Mansfield was a Montana senator. He was the longest serving majority leader. He was an Asian scholar. He visited China many times, and Mike Mansfield is my political inspiration. And I know that Mike Mansfield had a significant effect also on Senator Steve Daines. So we tend to be interested in China in Montana.